Hi, welcome to Golden Years. Happy New Year. My guest this month is Marie Edmonds, estate planning and elder law attorney. So come on back and she's going to give us some information and some tips. So come on back.
Why don't you ever see elephants hiding in trees? Because they're really good at it. Yeah, I get it.
Welcome back to Golden Years. This month I am interviewing Marie Edmonds, and she is one of my favorite lawyers who's going to teach us about your planning. You always told me in the past, make sure you have everything planned ahead so when those rainy days come and your life changes in a heartbeat, you have that plan ready. So now that it's a brand new year, let's start there. Are there any changes coming up the months ahead?
I don't see any real changes. I just think, time and again, it's just kind of going back to basics. Like you say, your life can change in a heartbeat, and not planning puts you in a terrible position. I find that for most of my clients, if once we get the basic planning done, it takes such a load off their minds because they know if something, if for some reason they can't handle their finances anymore, if they go in the hospital, they're in an accident, they have the right people named to help them. If they would happen to pass away, if they have things in order, they know their family will receive what they're supposed to receive, how they want it to happen, and really address the concerns that they have. Because as you may guess, all families have something they're worried about. And that really, I think, is what drives good planning, is thinking about and disclosing to whoever you work with what you're worried about. Because those things can be addressed in your estate planning. There's no doubt about it.
And like we've talked in the past, every family is different.
Yes.
There's many, many dynamics in a family, different personalities.
Yep.
So yes, if you plan ahead and you have everything in black and white, and you say, these are my plans, these are my wishes. So then everything will be easier down the road.
Definitely be easier. Definitely be easier. You can't always avoid all the family drama that happens, particularly when somebody passes away. I kind of like to say, particularly when mom and dad are gone, now the referees are gone. So if there were problems before, there are probably still going to be problems. We can't solve all the problems of the world, but certainly, you know who you want to be in charge. Families assume that the person in charge might be the eldest. Well, maybe not. Maybe that's not the right person for any number of reasons. They're not local. You're not that close to them. It will be a burden for them. Or I find sometimes someone has a family member that will handle their finances for them, but someone else will make their medical decisions for them. And that's not a bad idea.
I see a lot of that.
Yes, yes.
So you give one person one job and then it's done. And you know that.
Right. But I think a lot of the drama that happens can certainly be avoided or minimized if you have your plans set out, number one. And quite often, although I encourage families to have family meetings where we can get together and talk about what they've done, very few people actually do that. But that's not a bad thing to do, number one. Number two, and sometimes it may seem a little harsh, but when mom and dad are gone and I'm sitting down with family members, I advise that it really will work out better if who I'm speaking with are really just the family members, just the siblings. Don't bring your husband, don't bring your wife. Those meetings just go more easily if brothers and sisters are there and not anybody else.
The key people.
The key people, exactly. Because I find for most families, most of the time, everybody really does want to work it out. It may not be quite as they hoped or quite as they anticipated, and it's interesting what people will argue about, which are usually things, not money. And those conversations are much easier if there's not someone tapping you on the shoulder saying, that's not fair, you're not getting enough. So,
has it changed as far as your assets? Like, let's jump into the nursing home. if they, well, let's say if they were going to go into the nursing home
Right.
and Medicaid,
Right.
what's the fees that they have to spend down? Is that changed? The look back.
The look back has not changed. So when someone makes a Medicaid application, Medicaid looks back 5 years to see if you've given anything away, and if you have, they will penalize you based on how much you gave away. And that is numbers determined by the average cost of a nursing home. So it's not literally what you're paying that they use for a number, but what the average cost is. So that number changes a little bit every year. Usually goes up. So the look back has not changed. What has changed and what changes every year is the amount of money that a spouse at home can keep. That usually increases a little bit every year. The one on Medicaid is only allowed to retain $2,000 in assets. But let's say we've got a couple, and one of them is going into the nursing home. Certain things are exempt, meaning they won't be counted, so that's your home. So if I went into the nursing home, my husband could keep our home, that's not counted. Everything else that we own, nothing else being said.
A car.
And a car of any value, prepaid funerals they can keep. But everything else is counted, nothing else being said. And the one at home can keep half of those assets with a minimum of around $22,000 and a maximum of around $125,000. Like I said, those numbers are changing a little bit every year. So if someone has $300,000, half is $150,000. They can't keep $150,000. They can only keep that max, whatever that max number is. But if someone has $100,000, they can keep $50,000. If someone has $240,000, they probably can keep the maximum of $123,000, whatever it is. So those numbers change a little bit. Assets and income are looked at differently. So your income is yours, my income is mine, always. So if I'm in the nursing home, only at the max, only my income can be used to pay for my care. My husband's income is not counted.
Oh,
Which is,
okay.
now, however, having said that, the law says he is to have a minimum amount of income. If he doesn't meet that minimum amount of monthly income, he can keep some of my income. But his will never have to be used to pay for my care. So from a planning perspective, there are things you can do to try to get more income to the one at home than the one in the nursing home so that they can keep more. And that's the way that we sometimes look at protecting assets as well. Converting them from an asset that would be counted and has to be spent down to income, in which case that there's no limit on what the one not in the nursing home can keep.
You are a wealth of information. People need to sit down and talk to you because it's overwhelming.
It is overwhelming. I always say Medicaid is one of those areas that if someone calls me on the phone, we can't have a general Medicaid conversation because it's very, very fact specific. And there's so much information, it can be overwhelming. So certainly in my office, what we try to do is we get people in, we get a lot of information from them, and then we kind of summarize our conversation and put together, based on what they have, kind of some strategies for them. So Medicaid is a pretty complicated area. Not every attorney deals in the Medicaid area. So I think if you need that kind of help, you really should be going to someone, and that's what they do.
Mm-hmm. And there's many Medicaids now, correct? Am I right? Because
what do you mean, many Medicaid?
Well, there used to be just the regular Medicaid.
There's nursing home Medicaid, there's at-home Medicaid, there's community Medicaid. There's
community Medicaid.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. So you can be at home and still get Medicaid. There's the same financial qualifications, but you have to be homebound. And if you're getting benefits at home, someone comes in and assesses you from the Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging, determines what your needs are, and then usually they will cover so many hours a week, which can be a godsend. And a lot of times, talking about Medicaid, another important factor is, which we ask, is if you or your spouse is a veteran. Because there are veterans benefits available for if someone, once again, gets to the point where they need some care, some in-home care, assisted living, they can get some money to help pay for that.
Which they could call the Veterans Office in Medina.
Exactly, which is a wonderful source
Yes.
of information.
They know their information.
They know their information. They're very helpful, and their services are free.
And even doctor visits, too. Mm-hmm. If they have to be taken by van
Yes.
or ambulette,
Yep.
then they do that for them.
Yep. There really are a lot of good services in Medina County for seniors. Some of them you have to be aware of, but like I say, I think when you get into estate planning versus Medicaid planning, asset protection planning, it gets a little more complicated on what you need to do and what you can do. As you might guess, if you're trying to protect some of your assets, should you go into a nursing home, there are certainly some strategies, whether you have 5 years, that we know we can get through that 5-year look back period or something less. There are still things you can do, but you really need to be sitting down with someone who does that kind of planning.
And you need to plan ahead.
Oh, yes.
When you're in your right mind and when you have the time to think this through, because you know people aren't going to make a decision overnight.
Right, exactly.
And then if they want to get one child involved, just to go over the plan.
Yes.
Say, this is what we're thinking.
Yes.
And I know a lot of kids say, oh, you're not going anywhere. But like I said, I mean, so much is happening.
Yes.
You know, whether it's your health, whether a car accident, anything can happen. It just changes on a dime.
You know, and I know you've heard families, I know certainly I have, you know, my mother's never going to go into a nursing home. I'm never going to let that happen. Well, you know, that's not always possible. Sometimes it just gets to the point where you can't give them the kind of care they need. You just can't do it, no matter how much home care you get.
Exactly. And quality of life is so important.
Most definitely.
And I see families that are really wearing themselves down.
Oh, for sure.
Because they want to keep dad at home and they want to make it happen.
Right.
And sometimes when you weigh being in the nursing home versus home care, sometimes the home care price is higher.
It is, definitely.
Than being in the nursing home.
Definitely. It's certainly nice if you've got family members that are nearby if someone's in a nursing home. You know, the worst thing is to see someone who has no family members, they're in a nursing home, no family members, no advocates for them. I mean, because as we all know with any situation, you know, what you see every day, you know, is different than if you never go. You know, the people that are, sometimes how our loved ones are cared for. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what the care is, but you know, if there's someone advocating for you, you're probably going to get watched a little better.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe cared for a little better.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, I'm going to go in and make sure that happens if I'm the daughter.
You're going to babysit.
Yes, exactly.
So let me ask you this, and you might not know this Medicaid question, but all these nursing homes are popping up. Okay, so right now, like on the horizon, is there an allowable from Medicaid they could pay part of the fee at assisted living?
So yes, I mean, so there is an assisted living waiver, meaning there's some assisted livings have certain Medicaid beds. There's a requirements for those, like there is for everything else, but it's not as prevalent as it is for nursing homes. So not every assisted living takes those waivers.
Okay.
And actually not all nursing homes take Medicaid beds. So we, once again, advise people, you know, if someone's going in and they don't need Medicaid now and they don't need that much care, make sure that your loved one's in a someplace that takes Medicaid, so if things develop, you don't have to move them somewhere. And as you might guess, you know, most nursing homes have a limited number of beds that are Medicaid beds, which financially makes sense because the Medicaid reimbursement rate is going to be less than a full private pay rate. So once someone's on Medicaid, you know, what your patient liability is at the max, whatever your income is, less $50 a month, which is reserved for personal belongings and personal hygiene and things that you might need. But you know, you may very well, if you've got a spouse at home that doesn't have much income, all the institutionalized spouse's income may go to the one at home, and there's no patient liability. So once again, it's really calculating numbers on what someone pays, what they have to pay when they get in.
Again, that could be overwhelming.
It most definitely. What I try to tell people who come in and talk to me, you know, that's the worst time of our lives. You know, we've got mom or dad or husband or wife that are ill enough that they have to be in a nursing home and need care. And you have all those worries about their care and the best place for them or whatever. You know, that's the most important thing that you need to worry about. You let us help you get the financial piece in place. So it's try to take some burden off someone who comes in, knowing you do your piece, I'll do my piece, but you need to make sure that have chosen the right place. You know you've got the right caregivers. You know all those are in place, and we'll help you do the financial piece because it is definitely overwhelming.
Oh, it is, and especially for the kids who are involved in their families.
Yes.
You know, their children are growing up. All of a sudden, it comes to a halt because mom fell. She's got issues now, and she's got the little dementia going on. So, like, what do we do with mom?
Yes.
I mean, they just weren't ready to put mom in their program right now.
Yes.
Because their life is so busy.
Yes, definitely.
And it does. I mean, people get very frustrated,
right,
and they just assume so much.
Oh,
so
yes.
if they don't sit down earlier in life and talk to a planner, you know, everything could be
fall apart.
Fall apart and very stressful.
Right.
We are going to take a quick break and come on back.
Okay.
You make me wear my bike helmet.
Taught me never to run with scissors. And to follow the swimming rules.
You tell me to stay away from drugs.
To always buckle my seatbelt.
So why do you keep a loaded gun in your drawer?
How safe is that?
You asked them to follow some safety rules. Now they're asking you. In fact, they're counting on you. Never let your gun get into the wrong hands. Remember, always lock it up. Visit ncpc.org.
Leah, did you put a new dent in that?
This one? No.
Were you texting and driving again?
Yes.
Hi, Leah.
Hi, Dad.
Sorry about your bumper.
Welcome back to Golden Years. I am interviewing Marie Edmonds, and she is sharing with us about estate planning and update your wills and make sure your family knows what your wishes are. Because when it comes to that time that things have to be decided, make it easier on the people, your loved ones. So I have a question.
Yes.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate.
Yes.
Okay, so mom and dad have the will.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but Sally is thinking she wants to contest it. And Tom said, no, this is mom and dad's wishes. We're sticking with it. How big of a nightmare does that happen?
Well, it can definitely be a nightmare. So certain people have a right to contest a will, and they typically are the ones who are named in the will and your heirs by law, who are, if it's mom and dad, it's their children or grandchildren if someone's predeceased, a child's predeceased them. They have a right by law to contest it. However, contesting a will is not an easy process. It's long and expensive, and you have to prove one of two things. Either that mom or dad did not know what they were doing when they signed their will, or that they were unduly influenced by someone to make the will that they presented. So for example, if we go back to Tom and Sally, if the will had 75% go to Tom and 25% go to Sally, and Tom is the one who brought mom in to do the will, sat with mom while she did the will, now Sally has some grounds for, well, of course you got 75%. You were kind of there twisting her arm. But that's not, unless those things don't happen, that's not an easy burden to meet, is to prove an undue influence or that you didn't know what you were doing, when you came in and prepared your will. So for example, we always ask somebody, if you don't want to leave all your children something, I still have to know who all your children are. Because if you don't tell me about somebody, and then they come back and say, well, why didn't I get anything? And we're saying, well, you didn't.
Who are you?
Who are you? Exactly. Whereas if I know that there's 4 children and you purposely left somebody out, well, that's very telling. Yes, I have 4 children and I don't want to provide for this person, and here's why.
Oh. So do you ask that ugly question?
Oh, well, yes, but in all honesty, it doesn't matter why. I mean, I always say the only person the law really protects is a spouse. You can't, in effect, disinherit a spouse. The law has some provisions for that. At least through the probate court, you can't. Whereas, if you want to leave everything to one of your children and nothing to the other ones, you have all the right in the world to do that. Now, having said that, there are ways to get what you want to have done without going through the probate system at all, which is by setting up your accounts and your assets a certain way, titling them a certain way. So what goes through probate court when someone dies, which means does your will control, are things that you own that are just in your name alone, not co-owned, no beneficiary, not owned by a trust, just your name. That's what goes through probate court. So for example, you have your real estate set up that it's transfer on death to somebody. That does not go through probate court. If you have a bank account that's got one of your children on it jointly with you, and when you die, that bank account goes to that person legally. Even though your will may say, I want everything divided among my 3 children, legally that bank account belongs to that one child. Now, whether he or she will share it is completely up to them. They do not legally have to do that. So if you don't want things to go through probate court, you can set up payable on death designations, transfer on death designations, and those things will never go through probate court.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly some pros and cons to some of that. So, for example, you got a transfer on death deed, and you have 3 children, and one of them has marriage is not great. If you do transfer on death to your children and you die, now if they want to sell the property, not only do they have to sign, but in Ohio, their spouses have to sign as well.
Oh.
So sometimes that can get a little sticky. So once again, I think from a planning perspective, the most important thing for your attorney to know is what's your family situation, what are you concerned about? That will help us decide what's the best way for your plan to actually be effective and do what you want it to do.
Make it easy for all.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, so what happens when there's no will in place?
So the law has a scheme on who inherits what when you have no will. So what the law says, if you're married and you die, everything will go to your spouse.
Okay.
If you don't have a spouse and you have children, everything will go to your children. If one of your children's predeceased you, their share will go to their children. So the law has a plan, in effect, a will written for you. Now, of course, that means you haven't named an executor, so then we're limited on who you can appoint as an executor, because if there's no will, it has to be an Ohio resident. So if you got children out of state, they can't serve.
Oh.
Which they can if you can name an out-of-state executor if they're related to you by blood or marriage. So you can name someone out of state, but if you don't have a will, it cannot be an out-of-state person.
Do these laws change through the years?
Well,
or?
not typically. I mean, they haven't changed in years. So that would be nothing I would worry about. But once again, go back to, should we be planning? Well, yes. You may have 3 children, but you may, maybe you've got you want somebody to go to your grandchildren. You have a spendthrift child. You have a special needs child. You want to plan for that. You want to plan for those contingencies. And things will not go as you wish if you don't do any planning. So, for example, in Ohio, you can leave something to a special needs beneficiary, someone that's on Medicaid, let's say, in a certain kind of a trust, which will not disqualify them from continuing to get those benefits. Whereas if you leave something to them outright, it's going to kick them off their benefits, which quite often is not really what they want.
Really?
Mm-hmm. But traditionally, I think we disinherited special needs children and grandchildren because we didn't want to kick them off their benefits, and we figured their siblings would just make sure they were taken care of. Well, that leaves a lot of pressure on siblings to have to worry about a brother or sister.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah. Especially if mom and dad took care of them all their lives.
Yes.
Well, then,
yep,
you have to plan for the future.
You definitely do. Yeah, and I understand planning. The hardest thing is sometimes deciding who's going to be in charge of doing what. But most of us have given that some thought. And I always say you're better off having something in place because you can always change it. It's when you have nothing in place that, kind of Murphy's Law, whatever will go wrong, will go wrong.
Oh, I bet. So in 2020, no major changes have?
No, I don't see anything.
Medicare, Medicaid.
Well, once again, government. The Medicaid number, I haven't seen any of any big changes on the horizon for Medicaid. So they're not increasing, that I know of, not increasing the look-back period. I mentioned the amount that a community spouse can retain goes up a little bit every year. So that will happen automatically. There's no Ohio estate tax, so that's not on the agenda for that to be resurrected, nor do I think it will be. The federal exemption, which is the amount that you can leave tax-free in your estate to someone other than a spouse, is currently at $11.4 million indexed for inflation. So that goes up a little bit every year. But in all honesty, most of us aren't worried about that.
I might have to worry about it.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, less than 1% of the population has to worry about estate tax.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay, what good advice do you want to leave for my viewers to get the planning rolling?
Okay. I would say that the best thing you can do for your family is to just take care of the basics. And to me, the basics are make sure that you have a will, a financial power of attorney, and your healthcare documents, living will and healthcare power of attorney in place. I'm telling you, it just makes crises go much better. It's a gift for your family. There's no doubt about it. Just get those basic things in order.
Very good advice. Because we don't know what spouse is going to go first.
Right.
And so you would make it easier on each other too,
Yes,
the
yes,
spouses,
yes.
to have everything in place.
Definitely.
And I know I'm very guilty because I keep saying I got to do it, I got to do it. But then you just keep going day by day by day by day.
I know.
And then in life it's just going so fast.
I know. Or I find a lot of times we think, oh, well, I'll wait till I'm older to do that. Well, you know,
When's
things
older?
can happen. When's older? Things can happen to anybody. You know, you
Yeah.
can get hit in the parking lot, and the next thing you know, you're unconscious, and who's making your decisions for you? Now, the law says if you've got a spouse, that's him. But let's say your spouse wasn't there. Now who?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So it'd have to be the state.
Well, it's not the state, but then someone has. Well, then someone has to. Some family member would have to present themselves as the next person in line in order to do that. But is that the one you want?
True.
You know, that's not always the case. Once again, I think families make assumptions on it should be the oldest and it should be, you know, that's not always the case.
Right. Because
You know who you trust, who would who thinks more like you, who would make the right decisions. And sometimes those decision makers, it's not easy for them to assume those roles. So don't put someone in that role that really it would be overwhelming for them. Choose someone else. It doesn't have to be a family member.
Oh, that's true too, yeah. Because I've heard some stories about that too. You know, they just didn't want to. They didn't want to. Well, they say they don't want to burden their children
Right.
with their matters, so they decided to get someone
Right.
in reach
Right.
that could help them out through
Right.
this.
Right. And that may or may not make sense. You know, we're always a little suspect when we start naming someone that's not a family member. But you know.
But you don't know what happened through the years.
Oh no, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And we're not here to judge people.
Exactly. And once again, it comes down to you can do whatever you want. Just you choose.
And if some person wants to say, okay, I want to give, like, right off the bat, I want to give $100,000 to a charity.
Yep.
I mean, they cannot question that because
Right.
that's what they
Right.
wanted.
Yes.
Done.
Yes. Yep.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you
this
for inviting
month.
me.
And you have a wonderful website, easy.
Yes.
That-
MarieEdmonds.com.
Okay. And it's user friendly, so
Yes.
they could go on it and you could share everything that you want to offer and what should be done.
Yes.
And steps that could be taken. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You always have such wonderful information.
Thank you.
And we need to share with the viewers. You know, sometimes we don't want to look ahead. We want to have tunnel vision, but planning is the key.
Yes, indeed.
So, with that in mind, please take advice and get your future in your books and orders and your plans in order. You could go to Marie's website, check out her ideas, and join us next month. And have a good month.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.